No, you're right. And we were talking to Sarah Hildreth, and she was talking about that novel pairing, right? And that's kind of what you're
Mhm,
talking about, like how you can read something from James Baldwin or Zora Neale Hurston, and kind of
mhm,
see how they dealt with the world in different ways, but and saw it in similar ways. So speaking of
mhm.
that, talk to us a little bit how James Baldwin's work has impacted your life as well as Zora Neale Hurston.
Sure. So James Baldwin is a little new for me. Even though I've read about, I think four or five of his books now. But so the easier question or the easier answer for that would be Zora Neale Hurston has had a big impact over the last 2 years. When I started that Zora challenge last January 2023. Um, and that was a way we talked about community building, right? So that was a way of building community, of getting other people and then keeping myself accountable of reading her works. And I'm very inspired by her as a person because she was very, you know, uh, she covered a variety of different genres. She didn't write solely in one specific genre. She was writing fiction, nonfiction, essays, plays, memoir. She was pretty much kind of all over the place and was a dedicated researcher, anthropologist, and she had a very interesting life. And so her writings have, reading all of her writings the last 2 years has just really um, inspired me to learn more about her and just the work that she did. And she was just super smart
Yeah,
too. Even when you read like some of her nonfiction works, you think that she was just, like I said, you think of just one book, Their Eyes Are Watching God, but when you read all of her nonfiction pieces, it's just like she had a very witty mind that you don't really see too many people like that today.
yeah, yep. And then so from both those writers, what would be a good book someone should kind of look into? I know you said their eyes are watching God
Mhm.
for Zora Neale Hurston, but is there any other book that you're like, hey, this one maybe because that one is the one most people have read. So what's the
Right.
next one you'd kind of jump into there?
I'd say the next one would be Jonas Gorvine, which was her first novel,
Okay.
and that's the book that actually was the more popular book when she was alive. And Their Eyes Watching God became popular after her death. But that book is semi-autobiographical because it's about her father and her mother's relationship. Who and his her father was like this preacher who was a philanderer, and it's a very it's a very fascinating story. So yeah, I would recommend, if you have already read Their Eyes Watching God, go to Jonas Gorvine next.
Yep. And then for James Baldwin, I think most people might have read A Fire Next Time, or so what would be that next one you'd kind of say for the James Baldwin?
Yeah, read his fiction. So I would say Go Tell It on the Mountain,
Okay.
which in a similar vein, that was his first book, right? And like Zora, that book is semi-autobiographical too, which is about him. Well, it's not about him, but it's about a character that is probably based off of him, based off of a young James, and his kind of a coming of age story in I think it's like set in 1940s Harlem. So that one's pretty good too. So that would be my suggestion. Because I haven't read enough of his fiction yet to get a good um to have a good conversation about it yet. But from the people that I know on Goodreads and Instagram, they tend to say that's one of their favorites. And then there's some other ones that I haven't read yet. So,
Yeah, and it's just so on this last part, how has engaging with their work made
mm.
you create your own lane and your own path, whether it's in the book space or creating it just in your own community and in your own life?
Yeah. So like, and I'll mention the with the Zora challenge primarily. I felt like with her works caused me to like do a deep dive of her life. So like, for example, when I mentioned that piece about Jonas Gorvine being the more popular book, most popular of her books when she was, or most notable book when she was alive, I was like reading all of her obituaries when she died.
Yeah.
I was just kind of like, going in this rabbit hole about, I need to find more out about her life because for those who don't know, she died penniless. And, there was a time when I was trying to figure out how does someone who at one point height of her career and then ends up in this predicament at the end of her life, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it was a lot of, as I'm reading more about her, I'm trying to, well, as I'm reading her creative works, I wanted to learn more about her as a person. And then at the same time, I felt like as you read a lot of someone's works, regardless of who it is, you start thinking about, well, what would so and so say about this situation?
Exactly. Yep.
So, and then sometimes you kind of pick out some quotes here and there where they actually said X about this situation or
No,
that
yeah,
situation.
like some people's like when you read books, some people's quotes just live like rent free in your head. Like you
Yeah,
see it and you're like, okay, boom. I'm thinking how, like you said, like how Zora would think or how Baldwin would think. So yeah, those quotes stick with you and they definitely pull something out of you. Speaking of that, outside of those two authors, like, can you share a book that you've read lately that has challenged your worldview?
yeah. So I got about two. One's more recent, and then one's a little. It's been a while since I read it. So, the first one, the more recent book, is The Color Purple, which I read. This was I reread it earlier this year, um, alongside Honore Fanon Jeffers, who wrote the love songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. And we did like some IG Lives discussions on that book. And every mostly every Black person has seen The Color Purple, right? The movie, or watched, maybe have seen the play or whatever, or know the lines from the movie if they even haven't seen the movie, right? And so I had read the book the first time maybe about 5 years ago, and so rereading it a second time, and especially hearing from other people's point of view, especially Black women's point of view on this book, is changed my worldview as it relates to like thinking about Black feminism and in the ways that men have been abusive physically and emotionally, past and present, to Black women, and how, especially, you can even make the argument, what can uh, that book to me kind of show like a pathway for men to like make a better, um, better choice for themselves and treating people in a better way. So
Uh,
that's kind of where my worldview changed with that. Yeah.
That's good. And speaking of that, kind of, what's a Black author you engage with later in your life that you were surprised that you got to them so late? Like, you're, oh, dang, I can't believe I was sleeping on this author.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely would be Zora Neale Hurston for one, but an additional author would be Henry Louis Gates Jr.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You read the
I
new book that just came out? Or,
yeah, I haven't read that one yet,
okay,
but
that's the one I want to
yeah,
read.
yeah. The one that snuck up on me was his Stony the Road, which was about like Reconstruction and um the redemption period after Reconstruction. And you talk about a book that was trauma filled. I literally read that book and I had to like I literally had to take breaks from it. And you talk about Black joy. After I finished that book, I said I need to read something light because this book is not, it's not, it was taking a toll on me.
If you enjoyed that clip, make sure you head over to www.bookumapp.com to download our app so you can connect with your favorite bookish content creators, start conversations, and start your own book club.